I'm not trying to start an argument here, but let's see if we can identify the top 10 best science fiction novels of all time. Please join the conversation. Hey everybody, welcome to D3 Reads. It's Eric. Thanks so much for joining. I hope you're having as productive a reading summer as I am. I've actually done very well keeping up with my TBR. And so today we're going to talk about the best science fiction novels of all time. But before we dig in, I want to update you on where I am with my summer TBR and what that means for future videos. If you'd rather just jump straight to the science fiction novels, there's going to be a link in the description, so feel free to click on that. But first, the TBR. Like I said, I've been pretty productive over the last couple of weeks. I'm pretty pleased. I have just recently finished Martha Wells' Witch King. I've also finished John Scalzi's Red Shirts, as well as Matt Denneman's Dungeon Crawler Carl. And to top it all off, I added in a classic, Bill the Galactic Hero. Now, I'm going to be doing specific videos, thematic videos in the coming weeks where I'm going to review each of these books. And so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on them now, except just to say that I enjoyed each one of these, but maybe not exactly how I expected to enjoy them. But more on that here in the coming weeks. Red Shirts, Dungeon Crawler Carl, and Bill the Galactic Hero are going to be covered in a video that will hopefully be co-hosted with the other half of D3 Reads, Jeff. We plan on reviewing or taking a look at the best humor, science fiction, and fantasy novels out there. So I'm really stoked about that because humorous science fiction and fantasy really shaped a lot of the reading. They made up a lot of the reading I did as a young man, and so really helped me enjoy reading quite a bit. So looking forward to that one. Currently, I am reading Joe Abercrombie's The Devils, as well as R.F. Kuang's The Poppy War, and I went ahead and picked up Brandon Sanderson's The Well of Ascension. I mentioned in a previous video that I was torn between Sanderson books since Mistborn. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't the passion I'd hoped it would be. And so I was thinking about maybe starting The Way of Kings, but I decided to go ahead and continue with the Mistborn series. So I've started The Well of Ascension as well. I'm going to take those books here in a couple of weeks once I finish them up, roll it in with The Witch King, and do an update to my best fantasy video here again, probably, hopefully no later than the end of August. So that's where we stand with that. Once I finish the fantasy and the humor, science fiction and fantasy, got a couple other things I'm also going to sprinkle in throughout. But I'm going to eventually shift gears into full Spooktober mode and get ready for Halloween and start reading The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones, and then add in a couple other choice horror novels as well by Stephen King and Joe Hill. So that's what the next couple of weeks are looking like. Again, it's a lot of reading, but I'm having a great time reading it. But on that note, what are you reading? Take a few minutes, if you could, to drop a comment in here. I don't care what genre it is, but if you've got a book that you're really enjoying this summer, let us know so that we can also enjoy it here. Now, if you've been with the channel for a while, you may remember probably like the first month that after the channel launched, we posted a video that talked about the best science fiction authors. Now, the scope of that video was to identify, the founders of the genre, as it were, the ones who kind of created science fiction as we know it, and it had classics. I mean, starting way back with Mary Shelley. We talked H.G. Wells and Edgar Rice Burroughs and authors like that, Frank Herbert, the folks that basically inspired generations of authors to come. I kind of want to take that a step further and try to identify the top 10 science fiction books ever written. So those that not only inspired us since they were published, but also are still popular today. Now, this is going to be a contentious topic, and it really should be. I mean, reading is a passionate thing to do, and we all have our favorites. So as we go through this, if you don't see or hear your favorites, and you think it's got the legs to be considered one of the top 10, please let us know so we can continue the discussion, because this is how I approach this, because I'm not so arrogant to think that I know the absolute 10 best science fiction books out there. So this is what I did. I did a search on Google just for best science fiction books of all time. And as you can guess, there's plenty of lists out there. Top 10, top 25, top 50, 75. I took a look at a number of them, and I started seeing the books that showed up on each of these lists. There was quite a bit of overlap, as you can imagine. And then what I did is, as I've done in the past, I went to Goodreads and I took a look at their list of best science fiction books. Now, they actually have a couple of lists that kind of cover the same things, but from slightly different angles. So what I did is I took a couple of these lists and I kind of blended them together because there was significant overlap. But remember, this is going to be a point of departure. I don't necessarily agree with the way things kind of landed with Goodreads. And so we're going to use this to guide the conversation. And then over subsequent videos, we will try to see if we can narrow down to create an ultimate sci-fi TBR that we can recommend to our fellow booktubers. Now, the two Goodreads lists that I mainly reference here, one of them was called the Best Science Fiction, and the other one was called Popular and Highly Rated Science Fiction. Now, the Best Science Fiction list was the primary one because it had over 3,000 books on this list, and it was voted on by over 6,000 folks. And so I focused in on the top 10 of that list, but I wanted to cross-reference it with others. And so the highly popular list, it was interesting because it only had like 100 some odd voters on there and like almost 200 books. But the difference was they tried to be a lot more selective in their list. So it had to be books with over 25,000 reviews or ratings rather, and it had to have been the first in a series and some other criteria as well, just to make it a little bit more exclusive on what books could be considered the top books. And interestingly, they overlapped quite a bit. I would say like 80% of those books were on both lists. So I thought that's a great place to start. But again, so I'm not sure I agreed with how everything landed on both those lists. So we're gonna start off, and it's kind of a countdown, but I don't consider these like, you know, number one to number 10, though I do think their first choice or the number one choice on these lists, I do kind of agree with, and I know not everyone's going to. So that's part of the fun of these types of conversations, right? So let's go ahead and get started, but I do have one disclaimer. Of these top 10 books, I haven't read all of them. There's a couple that I have not read. Shame on me. And I'll let you know which ones those are. All right, so let's get started. Number 10 is The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury. Now, this book was published in 1950, and it's considered a classic of science fiction. Now, the interesting thing about this book was that it wasn't written as a novel. Bradbury had published a couple of short stories over the late 1940s, and then I guess his editor told him to kind of put it together into a book form, and so he had to do some tweaks to make this into a kind of a complete story. Now, this is one of the books I may have read in my youth, but I really don't remember much about it. Now, I do have memories, but I think most of those memories actually come from a 1980 miniseries that was based on that. I think it had Rock Hudson in it, and I do remember that the adaptation of it and the book, both of them had some really creepy elements to it as the humans and the Martians first begin to interact with each other. But that's about all I remember it. So everything I tell you about this story comes from me reading some reviews of it because I was trying to jog my memory because I was sure I read it, but man, not a whole lot was shaken loose. But this is called The Martian Chronicles because, again, being based on a number of short stories that weren't necessarily originally intended to be related, basically broken up into chunks of a futuristic time in Earth's history, which incidentally, in the original publication of it, I think expands all the way to the far future year of 2026. But I read that in a subsequent publishing of it close to the year 2000, they went ahead and added another 30 years or something like that so that it wouldn't be so imminent in our timeline. But the original Martian Chronicles spanned all the way to 2026, so next year. The story's kind of neat because humanity is trying to colonize Mars, not realizing that there were Martians already on the planet. And so as Earthlings and Martians start to interact with each other, things don't go very smoothly, and then you wind up having conflict between the Martians and the Earthlings. Now, that's kind of like the beginning of the story. I can't speak much more to the effectiveness of how this all kind of winds up together, but this book, if not in the top 10 of most lists, it is almost certainly on every best science fiction book list that you're going to come across. So, The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury, number 10 on the Goodreads list. What do you think? Does it belong on the top 10? Number 9 is kind of interesting because though I think it's a really good book, I don't know if it belongs on the top 10. I think it's got some unfair advantage. And what I mean by that is, number 9 is Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. Now, I did cover and review Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep in my Cyberpunk collection video, and I'll link that here if you haven't had a chance to check that out yet. I think this is a fantastic book. I think that the movie adaptation of it, starring Harrison Ford, and then they had the sequel to it, Blade Runner 2049, that's kind of given some extra oomph or popularity to this book. Philip K. Dick is an excellent writer. He's got some hang-ups. He's got some very political views that makes his way into a lot of his books. Not as much inside of here as some of his other short stories and books, but I really think that the book is kind of skewed how popular this story really is. Is it a good book? Absolutely it is. It tells a story of Rick Decker, who is kind of a bounty hunter who works for the police, hunting down rogue androids because of the threat that they pose to humanity. Now, it takes place in this dystopian world where after World War III, the whole world is basically covered in ash as opposed to the rain you see in the movie Blade Runner. And it really poses a lot of really, interesting questions about, humanity and hope and religion and things like that. It's a really good story, but I'll be honest. I mean, the androids in the book are nowhere near as cool as they are in the movie. I said it, but it is a good book, and I found it very interesting and more thought-provoking than the movie. The movie is more action-packed, whereas this had a lot more contemplation, again, about religion and propaganda and things like that. But I don't know. I don't know if I would have put it in the top 10 of a best sci-fi books of all time. Certainly best cyberpunk book of all time. One of the best cyberpunk books. I definitely rate it that way. But tell me what you think. Does Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick belong in your top 10 books, science fiction books of all time? Now, number 8 is Hyperion by Dan Simmons, published in 1989. It's the first of a series, and I have to fess up. I not only have not read this book, but it wasn't even on my radar. I haven't read anything by Dan Simmons. I almost chickened out, actually. I almost pulled it from the list and swapped out a book that shows up on one of those two lists that I'm following, but not both of them. I was going to swap it out for Fahrenheit 451, which does not, interestingly enough, show up as a top 10 selection for best science fiction. I decided to keep it in here because of the two Goodreads lists that I was using. It appears on both of them. And I just thought it sounded really interesting, but I can't give you a whole lot on it because I haven't read it. And it wasn't until I started pulling this list together that I had ever heard of it. I'm not going to spend any time on this, except that Goodreads readers have voted it as a top 10 book to include on this. And I am going to put this on my TBR and try to get to it by the end of the year. And I'll let you know in an update whether or not I think it belongs on a top 10 list. But let me know, those of you who have read it, does Hyperion belong on a top 10 science fiction list? Now, number 7 was another surprise that I found on the best science fiction of all time list by Goodreads, because it is All Systems Red by Martha Wells, the first of the Murderbot Diaries series. Now, I did a whole video on the Murderbot Diaries series a couple of weeks before the Apple TV version came out, because I wanted to try to get folks to read it before the series came out, because I thought the books were so well done. I thought it'd be a good preparation to see if the series captured the essence of the books. And I really do enjoy these books. I think Murderbot is just both deep and hilarious. I think that the plots of each of the individual, because the Murderbot Diaries is largely a collection of novellas until you get further on into the series. They're just quick-paced and just a lot of fun, a lot of great action. It tells the story, for those of you who haven't seen the show or read the books, it tells the story of this sec unit, as he's called, which is an organic cyborg contraption that is made to provide security for those who are exploring in uncharted or unknown worlds, or worlds where they're not sure what's going on. In order to do these types of explorations, you have to get permission from various governments and corporations, and the corporations require insurance, and they require these security units to provide security, and also to monitor the folks that are doing the work to see if they can somehow be exploited for financial gain. It's all about what they call a hyper-capitalist system. It's just really, really just a rich, wonderful story. The Sec unit we are introduced to calls himself Murderbot because of an incident where he wound up killing a bunch of his clients, and he doesn't know why. Because because once the company he works for got hold of him, wiped his memory, and so now he's trying to figure out why he in subsequent stories he's trying to figure out why he did that. But he dubbed himself Murderbot. Murderbot winds up befriending the humans that he's working for, and it's just this really interesting tapestry of emotion and motivations and great science fiction. So it's fantastic, and maybe in time, Murderbot will land where it should be as one of the best science fiction books of all time. But I just think it's a little early for Murderbot to be on a top 10 list. I'm not saying I'd be absolutely against it on the list, but I was a little surprised to see it there. I enjoyed it immensely, but again, I'm not sure I would put it onto a top 10 list. But let me know what you think. If you thought Murderbot was that good, drop a comment in there. And I hear that Martha Wells just came out with another addition to the storyline. So I haven't read that yet. Let me know if you've read it and what you thought about it. Number 6 is Isaac Asimov's Foundation series. Now, Foundation number 1 is the only one of the series I've actually read. And Foundation, the first book, is the one that actually shows up on these lists, but a lot of them will also say the series as a whole should be considered one of the best science fiction series out there. Matter of fact, I believe that Foundation won the Hugo Award in 1966 for best science fiction series. And Foundation, the one I read, is a fantastic book. I covered it in the best science fiction authors video that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. And it has done a lot to shape science fiction as we know it today. You can draw parallels with Dune and with Star Wars. You've got a galactic empire. You've got hyperspace. The story is just vast and sprawl. You can see how it sets up. You got this idea of this galactic empire. It's not so much evil, like say in Star Wars, it is corrupt and decaying. And the main thrust of the plot is there's this kind of, I want to call it a prophecy. I can't quite remember how they phrased it in the book because it's been a couple of years since I read it. But basically, there's this mathematic philosophy that by using this kind of scientific philosophy, if you will, the whole future of humanity could be traced out and projected to show that it will eventually collapse. And so the whole idea here is how to kind of prevent that. This kind of broad, I know, but I remember just being fascinated by the story, and I always meant to finish the series, but this happened before I started this channel, and I just never got around to the subsequent novels. I think there's prequels and everything else. I mean, it's a vast universe, highly regarded, considered one of the best science fiction series out there, and one that I definitely think is definitely, you can argue, belongs on most top 10 lists for science fiction novels. So give it a shot and let me know what you think of Foundation. Number 5 is Orson Scott Card's Ender's Game. Now, I just did a video last week about the best military science fiction written by non-veterans, and I go into some depth with Card's Ender's Game. It's considered one of the best military science fiction books out there, and I was impressed to see that it was also landing on Goodreads' best science fiction stories of all time. Taking aside the military side of it, the military science fiction side of it, it does do what science fiction does best, which is poses questions about morality, about humanity. The enemy in this story are this alien creatures called the buggers, and they're an insect-like race. And they've been at war with humanity. They've done these 2 invasions against humanity. Humanity's barely been able to win. And so this international fleet is basically identifying these gifted children and raising them to be generals to help fight the buggers when they finally come back to attack a third time. And so Ender finds himself in a human struggle as he's going through this training and going up against these other young men who are also being trained to be generals. And that's fascinating enough. But then when he finally has the confrontation with the buggers, and just the kind of the way the story wraps up about the nature, the cycle of violence and vengeance with these warring races, is, I thought, really poignant and does a really good job. So I can see Ender's Game being considered one of the top 10 science fiction books of all time. But what do you think? I know Orson Scott Card's a little bit controversial himself, so that colors a lot of folks' opinion of his work. But let me know what you think. Does Ender's Game belong on your top 10 list of best science fiction books of all time? Number 4 is another one I haven't read. I did see the movie, though. It's The Martian, which was published in 2011 and written by Andy Weir. Now, this story was just fascinating. You have a group of astronauts who have been sent to Mars for like a month-long expedition mission where they're checking things out on Mars. And a couple days into the mission, this massive sandstorm comes through and like wipes out the habitat, and so they have to flee. And one of the astronauts is left behind because they think he gets killed in an accident. Turns out he's not dead. So his other astronaut buddies get back up in orbit and start flying for home. Now he's stuck on Mars all by himself with his habitat. He's got to figure out how to survive and hope that they come back for him. And that's the premise of the story. He's using the resources that you have to grow food, to figure out how to get water, and how to survive, and also how to have hope that he can get rescued. And I think the premise of that is just absolutely fantastic. And again, I enjoyed the movie quite a bit, so I never actually put it onto my TBR. I didn't think about it until I was researching this, and I saw that The Martian is considered number 4 best overall, and is also on the most popular, I forget what place it is in that list, but Goodreads even has another list called Best Science Fiction for the 20th century and the 21st century. And the 21st century list, it's considered number 2. So that sounds like a lot of good hype. So I think I'm going to put The Martian on my TBR. Let me know what you think. Does it belong on the top 10 of all time? Number 3, everyone's heard of it, 1984 by George Orwell, published in 1949. This book is not only a classic science fiction, but it's also considered a classic of English literature. Matter of fact, it's not on just top science fiction lists. You'll find it on Time's best books of all time, best books of the 20th century. I mean, and it's made such an impact on the way we talk about politics and society, and how we interact with our government and the human rights and all that kind of thing. Now, I haven't read this since high school, and I'd be willing to bet most of you read this in high school at some point. I think it deserves some attention nowadays, because this book is quoted by everybody from all sides of the political spectrum, right? And I think it's probably misquoted and cherry-picked quite a bit. But I really think that, the idea of this cult of personality surrounding Big Brother, and the way the endless stream of propaganda from the government of Oceania, and the way that a big effort of the government in this is to rewrite history, and it's eerie, and I think it's super relevant for today. So I can easily see why 1984 is on this list. Now, science fiction is not so much fiction anymore, right? It's just this massive surveillance and the ability of the government to know what you're doing almost every moment. So yeah, I think the science fiction may be a little dated in this, but the story is certainly very relevant and some of the best of what science fiction has to offer as a genre. So this is number 3. I think it belongs in the top 10, but what do you think? Number two is completely different, and I haven't talked about this in the whole year I've been doing this, year plus months. Douglas Adams' The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. This is one of my favorite books of all time, and this is going to obviously play a prominent role when Jeff and I do the humor and satire writers for science fiction and fantasy. But this book shows up in so many best of top 10 lists. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is fun. Encyclopedia itself, I mean, we've all got them now, don't we? The ability to call up data from all this condensed data from your device that you carry with you. It's just amazing fun. Arthur Dent is the main character. If you've never read it, and if you haven't, shame on you. Go out there and get it. Arthur Dent is the human who is picked up by his buddy Ford Prefect, who happens to be an alien residing on Earth, who finds out that Earth's going to be destroyed, so they can make so that the powers that be can make a hyper pass byway through the solar system. So they got to blow up Earth. So they blow up Earth. Arthur Dent has to go hitchhiking with Ford Prefect, and there he meets up with Zaphod Beeblebrox and Marvin the Paranoid Robot or Android. I mean, it's just such a fun story. Now, I loved all of it. Well, I've read actually through So Long and Thanks for All the Fish. It's the 4-part trilogy. I haven't read past that. It's just a fantastic book. It belongs, I think, on a top 10 list. I can see why some folks might want to set it aside, because as a humor book, you don't see that too often in science fiction doing that well, but it works. It really works. I think the science fiction is fun. The whole thing is just a lot of fun to read. And I think I would put it on a top 10 list any day of the week. But what do you think? And finally, number 1, and this is going to cause some consternation. Dune by Frank Herbert. This is on a lot of lists. It's on both the Goodreads list as number 1. I agree with this. Frank Herbert's Dune is a sprawling saga, if you want to include the entire series. Now, I've read all of Frank Herbert's stuff. I never read the stuff that was written by his son, but Frank Herbert's stuff is solid. The whole context of the story, yeah, it's based on what you can think of as 1970s, 1980s, well, really current politics as well, with the spice placing for oil and the way that foreigners come in to control the spice and exploit the local workers and things like that. That's all, I think, still super relevant for today. The story of the Atreides family and the power struggle with the Emperor and the Harkonnens. It's multi-leveled. It's a layered, complex story with fantastic science fiction, mysticism, the Bene Gesserit and their conniving, and the way that they kind of planted the seeds of religion just so they can control the local. I mean, it's just so complex and so fascinating that I love the book. I've read it a couple of times when I was younger. Like I said, I've read all 6, I think it's 6 of the Frank Herbert books. It's number 1 on a number of lists. It's number 1 on my list. So I think Dune, if you haven't read it, give it a shot. I don't know why, but it seems fashionable to kind of look down on it at least in the Booktube circles. But I don't agree. I think it's definitely worth its weight in gold. So that's it. That's the top 10 best science fiction books of all time. What do you think? I want to use your comments to help craft an ultimate TBR. Let me know what you're reading, what you've read, what you think should be on there. We'll have a good conversation on it. And then in a future video, we'll put out the ultimate science fiction TBR. Thank you so much for joining, everybody. Please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We love every single comment, every single follow, and every like and share helps us out so much. So thanks a lot, everybody. Keep reading. We'll see you next time.